What's up, everybody? Welcome to Move the Sticks. DJ Bucky and our good friend Bruce Feldman is joining us. Bruce, how you doing, bud?
Great. Good to be on with you guys.
Great to have you back, man. Before we get into all that's going on and the three coaches that still have their jobs, how has your fall been?
My fall's been good. Unlike the last couple of years where I was on the road with Big Noon, I'm in the studio on Friday nights and all day Saturday with Chris Peterson and Mike Hill, and it's been a blast. I'm don't have to travel as much or at all, and that part's been good. So I can't complain, and it's been a fun season. A lot of craziness on the coaching carousel, as you guys know. But
is this? Are we at the end, middle, or beginning of the craziness with the coaching carousel?
We're in the middle because there's been so many big jobs that have come open, but at the same time, now we got to see who gets the jobs, and that's why I think. I don't want to say we're at the beginning, but I definitely don't think we're at the end of it.
What do the people on the inside say about the craziness that goes on about the carousel? Like the coaches that are in the middle of it, like how do they handle the heightened expectations and the shortened patience when it comes from the higher ups as it relates to job evaluation?
Yeah, Bucky, I think the thing that changed it as much as anything is Curt Cignetti goes to Indiana. Hardly anybody outside of small diehard football people knew who he was. He took over a 3-win team, and in year one, he got him to the playoff. And year two, there's a bunch of people, myself included, who think he has a legit chance to win a national title at Indiana. Now, it helped that he took a bunch of really good players with him from James Madison. But I think when people look and go, wait, that's Indiana, and he did this in a year, you have no excuse in year 4 at LSU or wherever, whatever year it is, because you definitely have more history, better stadium, better talent pool to recruit to. And I think because of that, and people look at the money involved with these coaching contracts. And I think, kind of a subplot of this is when you have like 2 or 3 coach agents who represent almost the entire field, it makes it more complicated, right? Because I think the agents have so much more leverage in this space than they do, let's say, as agents would if you're a player. It's just a much different dynamic, and I think because of that, you couple all those things, and there's just not enough. There's just not enough candidates to fill the jobs now that are going to be open. And I think what goes into it also is there's a bunch of schools that are like, we can't hire that guy. He went from a small school, or that guy feels kind of like this guy, even though they probably have very little in common actually in how they are, but just their profiles might be similar in terms of they were a group of 5 guy, or they came from this place. It's just, you're really trying to thread a needle, I feel like, if you're an AD trying to do a coaching search now.
There's a lot there, Bruce. The first thing I wanted to hit on was the Indiana portion. So, and people will say, yeah, they brought a lot of good players with them. Last year, they had 2 draft picks, a 4th rounder and a 7th rounder. So it wasn't like this, some of these other transfer portal years where we've seen, I go back all the way to the first one, which was probably Michigan State, where it's just, you get Kenneth Walker and like some, stud players that came in there. He's got some good players, but obviously speaks to the coach that he is. And I know they'll have more picks in the years to come here. But who is I'm not going to say who the name of the coach that people are chasing, but who is the profile that they're chasing? Is it the trying to find the next Cignetti? Is it the next Dan Lanning? Like, what is the most popular profile that they're looking for?
Right now, the belle of the ball on the coaching carousel is Lane Kiffin, right? Because he's having success in the SEC. He's an offensive guy. He's got a big social media presence. Not to say that people are like, ooh, pining after that, but fans want that edge to them, especially if you're at Florida or at LSU. I don't think it's much of a thing at Penn State, but certainly Ole Miss wants to keep him. But the way you frame that question, I think there's a lot of people who would love to get Dan Lanning, but he's probably not leaving Oregon.
Yeah. So, but I'm not saying like the coach itself, but saying like who is the next Dan? Are we trying to find the next Dan Lanning? In other words, an assistant that's at a high profile place. Are we trying to find the next Cignetti? Maybe someone who's been a head coach but has been building up levels. Like, what is the profile? Not so much the person, the individual, but what's the what's the popular profile they're chasing?
Yeah, I think if you're trying to build up, like there's a guy who replaced Cignetti at James Madison, Bob Chesney. He's still in his mid 40s, but spent a long time as a head coach at Holy Cross. Has done well at James Madison. I suspect he will get a Power 4 head coaching job this cycle. He might get Virginia Tech if James Franklin doesn't want it. I don't know where else he could be in play. I'm sure he'll get some consideration for Penn State. He's a Pennsylvania native. It is a big jump, but Cignetti's off the board for them. Matt Rule, who's close to the AD at Penn State, he's off the board. So I don't want to say they're going to reach for somebody, but they're going to probably hire somebody who definitely didn't win anywhere near as many games as James Franklin has at a high level. So there's that. In terms of the coordinators, Will Stein is a name. He's actually on Lanning staff that I think he will probably get a really good job before, I don't want to say sooner than later, because I know he has a good job right now. And I don't think he will be the guy who's going to jump into just any group of 5 head coaching job. But he was a former Louisville quarterback, then was a Texas high school coach and did well at UTSA, and now has done really well at Oregon. But he's younger, and I think he knows, all right, am I going to follow the Kenny Dillingham route? Well, Kenny Dillingham went to his alma mater, which is still a pretty big job, but it was down when he took it at Arizona State. So I think Will Stein is one of those. Colin Klein obviously was a terrific player in college. Now he's A&M's offensive coordinator. He's definitely drawing a lot of interest. I don't know if he ends up at Arkansas. I don't know if he ends up at Oklahoma State. But I think those are places that are definitely looking closely at him.
Bruce, it's interesting because Mike Elko is getting a lot of conversation, right? Because he's at Texas A&M doing a fantastic job with them. But they still feel like he needs to level up. Like people are talking like he needs to level up. Why would anyone want to leave Texas A&M when it appears they have all the resources in the world to fund a championship run year after year after year?
It's a great question, right? Because all those things are true, but when Sumlin's first year there, it was actually the first year they were in the SEC. They finished top 5, and it was the first time in a half a century that they did that. Like there's been feels like a lot of underachieving at A&M, right? And then Jimbo went there, and there was one pretty good year, but the rest was a big disappointment. Elko is a Northeast guy from New Jersey, did terrific at Duke, and has done. And I feel like this is just the beginning for him at A&M. Like they've been super impressive. I'd be curious what you guys think of this, but just like sitting there watching games with Coach Pete, I'm like, man, they look like they are the fastest team on the field every Saturday. You have a quarterback that way, you have dynamic running backs and receivers, and they get after you on defense. I could see Penn State being, hey, man, could we get that guy? And he is a Northeast guy. And he worked at Notre Dame as a defensive coordinator, has come at some high academic schools. So I think if you're Penn State, man, that would be if you could get him. I just don't know if you can get him out of College Station because they have a ton of money. They obviously had enough money to throw that money at Jimbo and then throw it even more when they realized it wasn't going to work. I mean, when nobody else thought you could have such a massive buyout and eat it. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he sits there and goes, you know what? I'm pretty close to maybe even this year getting over the top, but next year will probably only get better. So I don't know if he's movable, but I could see Penn State certainly being interested in him. If I'm LSU, I'd be interested in him.
I want to ask you about 2 guys who I've never met either guy, but I've been impressed with the jobs that they've done. And you do hear their names floated for some of these gigs, but Brent Key, Clark Lee. Tell me about those 2 guys and what they, the job that they've done, but what the allure would be for those guys for some of these huge jobs.
Yeah, what they have in common is they're both at their alma maters, and that probably adds another piece of whether you can get them out of those jobs. But like in Brent Key's case, it's a cool story where this guy, was a Georgia Tech offensive line guy. He was a longtime George O'Leary protege, was at UCF. At one point, we thought he was going to be the next coach at UCF. That didn't work out. He worked for Saban at Alabama. He was the interim and at Georgia Tech and ended up, they played so hard for him. He got the job and he's done really well. And he's got a quarterback in Haynes King, who, by the way, started his career at A&M, coach's kid. who seems to fit what they want, right? And you just can't, you have to be impressed with them. If the first time you really paid attention to them was when they were in like the 15 overtime game Thanksgiving weekend against Georgia, and they had Georgia on the ropes, you'd be like, all right, I'm a believer. Like, he's made smart hires too. Like his OC, Buster Faulkner, who had been a good OC at smaller schools and then was on Kirby's staff and kind of knew the secret to the sauce to like, ooh, what's going to give Kirby's defense some problems? Let's build that. And he did. So I think that's a really impressive deal that they have going there. And I could see, Penn State certainly will have interest in him. I heard LSU does. Whether he wants to leave or they can get him to leave, that's another story. With Clark Lee was the guy that, did a really good job as a defensive coordinator. He ended up getting the Vandy job. That's his alma mater. He's from Nashville. They chose him over Lance Leipold, who had way more experience as a head coach. And for a while, it looked like they chose wrong because Lance Leipold was working miracles at Kansas, and Clark Lee had a couple of 2-win seasons. But then he made a really shrewd move by hiring Jerry Kill and Tim Beck from New Mexico State. They told him, hey, we got this quarterback who, you might not think he looks like much, but he's special. And Diego Pavia is absolutely that. And it was a program-changing move. And I think they made some other really shrewd evaluations, not just in players, but in staff. And it's worked. And they have a chance to be a playoff team. What I think there will be a little bit of wonder about is how much is this Pavia and the New Mexico State guys? Are we going to be able to recreate this going forward? And I don't know the answer to that, but I know this, like, they are a legit threat to make the playoff this year, and they got a lot better. And I think he's created a really good culture. And, I think as a college football fan without a dog in the fight, you're kind of hoping these guys stay where they're at, because I just think it's good for the good of the sport when you see that, as opposed to, they just, I won't say chase them more money, but go for that, as opposed to like, hey, this is their schools. They care about it. They're invested in it, and they can build something that, Georgia Tech won a national title like probably before Bucky was in the ACC, right?
No. During that national title year, the only team that they could not beat were the North Carolina Tar Heels.
Wow.
We tied them that year because they were cowards and couldn't go for it. I think it was 10-10 my freshman year, my sophomore year. Yeah, so no, I know all about the Rambling Wreck from Georgia Tech.
I was trying to give you credit for being younger than that, but you have a humble brag that you've earned, so we'll go there. But yeah, it's been a minute for the Yellow Jackets, whereas Vandy, except for like a couple of years when James Franklin was there, has been atrocious, and Clark Lee's made him relevant.
All right, Bruce, you mentioned James Franklin. It seems like, I don't know if you've reported this out there, but all the buzz seems to be Virginia Tech. If he wants that, it's his. But then, is he sitting there waiting for Florida to see what happens there, or is Florida State going to pop, or any other changes that might happen? I'm not going to ask you where he's going to go. I'm just going to ask you, as someone who's followed James Franklin, who's had a lot of success, where do you think the best fit for James Franklin is?
I think it might be Virginia Tech, to be honest. And that's like, he's kind of on the clock from what I've heard in our reporting that, and I don't know if he has through the weekend. And then if it's like, hey, are you waiting on Florida State? Because that's what it sounds like he's doing is, do they fire Mike Norvell at Florida State? It's definitely a bigger job than the one in Blacksburg, but I think he's got a lot of connections around there. His right-hand guy, Michael Hazel, who was with him at Penn State and then went with Brent Pry to Blacksburg. He knows the lay of the land and has more intel on what's the job really like in Blacksburg than probably any coach will have it. It's a pretty good job. Is it a great job? I mean, at one point it was under Frank Beamer, but I think because he had put so much into it, I don't know if you're James, do you sit there and go, okay, if I don't jump on this job, because I want to see what's going to happen at Florida State. And if it doesn't open up, well, Maryland, where I used to work, might open up. I'm in the Big Ten because there's definitely pressure on Mike Loxley from what I've heard. They're on a big losing streak. And they actually have a really good freshman class in College Park. I don't know if you can keep them. The quarterback's good. The edge rushers are really good. But I think that's what makes it so hard is you're trying to figure out where the dominoes are going to fall.
Mhm.
And going from Penn State, where he built it up and the expectations were crazy. I just think those other jobs, I'm not saying there's not any pressure in Blacksburg, there's not any pressure to being the football coach at Maryland. Florida State's a different animal, but that might be a place where he could thrive, because we know he can recruit and we know he can develop really good athletes and really good players. The question was always like, with the exception of when Joe Moorhead was the offense coordinator, when Trace McSorley, who he did bring with him, he was from basically his recruiting class at Vandy, but like it's been kind of really underwhelming at quarterback for him over the previous decade or so there.
Bruce, I got to ask you because we're on the West Coast and naturally we'll get to UCLA, but I've never seen this happen before. How does an interim coach get fired after one game at Oregon State? Like, how does that even happen that you're the interim coach and after one game you get let go? Like, I've never seen that happen.
Yeah, I think when dysfunction breeds dysfunction, right? That's the best way I could say it. And, right now, I definitely feel for both those programs, one in Corvallis and one in Pullman, just because you kind of got left,
without
left
a
by
country
the wayside. Yeah. And I think it's hard with the players and hard, like Jake Dickert did a really good job in Pullman to keep it together before ultimately he bailed to go to Wake Forest, which is not an easy job either.
Yeah.
But I just think that's the challenge, especially if you're in Corvallis, you got like Jonathan Smith's there and it's his alma mater. And then even he's like, and everything was good until it was like, I can't do this anymore. And then he goes to East Lansing and now it's like, they don't want him there. So and he hasn't even been there 2 years. It's just, that's kind of the nuttiness of college football right now.
Want to see real quick, we'll hit a couple player questions and let you scoot, but quarterback wise, Dante Moore and Mendoza, what are some of the maybe the personality or character stuff on those guys? We've seen the play that they've had this year at Oregon and at Indiana and the job they've done, but two guys which we see almost all the time now didn't start there, have come from a different school. But what have you learned about those guys? Maybe more so as people than what we've seen as players.
Mendoza, I think, came into the year with more of a track record because he played a lot more and he was older. And I think he won over some people. I'll be honest, there's still a handful of people I talk to there's stuff they aren't that thrilled with about him, and maybe they're wrong, but I think there's still a little bit of hesitation on him. He probably makes enough plays with his legs, and I think they do a good job with that. I don't think he's Josh Allen athletically or anything close, but he's able to be more effective with his legs than I think people initially would have given him credit for. How he is as a leader. I mean, again, this is his first year in the system there. I think that's a little TBD of how he fits in the locker room kind of thing, but he's been very impressive. You look at the drive last week against Penn State. Yeah. Penn State still has some really good defensive players, and he gets sacked it's allowed as a mass, 3-5 or 3-6 or not. When that place is rocking, I don't care if they're 6-3 or 3-6. That was a loud, hey, we're going to take down a top 5 team here. And Zane Durant, who's an explosive edge rusher, sacks him the first play, and all of a sudden, like, ooh, it's bad. And then he leads him downfield. His receiver, Omar Cooper Jr., makes an amazing catch, to cap off the drive. But he made a couple of really good throws on that drive. And he also, I give him this, when they were at Oregon, he threw a pick 6. And I felt like, oh, here it goes. They're going to lose this game. And they didn't. I mean, it wasn't just him, but he played a big role in it. So, like I said, I've heard from, people inside football who are just kind of like not huge believers.
He's not super twitched up. I mean, I think that might be one kind of the little bit of the knocks there. But
yeah, and I think there's a little maybe a little other some hesitation. If you ask people that may come up in the combine, nothing like. His resume wise or legal wise, just like maybe the feel of how he fits kind of thing is maybe gives some people some pause. With Dante Moore, way less sample size. He's much younger. Unfair to say this, but like when he played against Penn State, again, Penn State has some athletes on defense. I was like, ooh, and it was on the road. He was much more athletic and made more plays with his legs than I think myself and a lot of people expected, because he's not a dynamic, he's not Jackson Dart or anything like that, or certainly not Lamar, but his arm talent's high level. You saw that he made one great throw last week to beat Iowa. It was an amazing throw, and that's what he can do. Everything I've heard from people I trust inside Oregon is he's not coming out. He saw the Jaden Daniels path, and not that he plays like Jaden in terms of like dynamic dual threat guy, but like, I'm going to keep getting better. I'm going to get a lot of reps. And I think that's what he does. And I think he stays next year. And look, I think Oregon's going to make a big financial commitment to make sure he can do that without much hesitation. So wouldn't be shocked if he was a top 5 pick in the 2027 NFL draft. I mean, the arm talent's high level. And I just think physically he'll just keep getting stronger. And, again, there's not like, I don't think he's like a super twitchy athlete. But he's, again, it's unfair to say he could be CJ Stroud, but
he's got some smoothness to him, like Stroud, from what I've seen of him too. Kind of remind me a little bit. He
does, and I feel like, Bucky, CJ Stroud probably better than anybody I know, because you coached him at a young age. Like, CJ Stroud was obviously a really good basketball player, and he was super accurate. I don't know if Dante's as athletic, but he's also like, I don't know anybody looked at CJ and was like, oh yeah, he's going to really beat you with his legs at that point. But against Georgia, he gave them problems with his athleticism, and it was like, it's there. He just didn't want to break the glass on it too often. And credit to him, because, it was there when he needed it, but he didn't want to major in it. I think Dante's like that too, but probably not as athletic.
The name that pops up as the little engine that could has certainly been the kid at Alabama, Ty Simpson. What do you know about him? Like, just what has been the story? Why has he been able to kind of pop this year for Kellen DeBoer?
Coach's kid, his coach is a high level FCS coach who's developed a lot of guys. And I think he's made dramatic improvement from last year to this year. And really from the spring till now, in terms of like, what can he do? Like, when you talk to Ryan Grubb, it was like mid-spring, it was like not smooth. All of a sudden now it's like he's cut it loose, and he is playing at an incredibly high level. And it's not like they have a run game to help him out. Now, they do have good dynamic receivers, but I think Grubb was obviously the guy who helped Washington get to the national title game with Michael Penix Jr. And there's a little bit of similarities there, I mean, good receivers and a high level passing game, and a guy who's playing with a ton of confidence.
That's great stuff, man. Last one, Bruce, and I'll let you run. I want to circle back to coaches real quick, and let's go, instead of going, at the college level, let's look at what could potentially go on at the NFL level. If we're going to have NFL openings, we already have some out there. So when you look into the future, is there a college coach that you see? There's been rumors with Sark. There's been rumors with Lane. There's been even some talk. Does Kirby maybe want to take on another challenge? Do you see any of these college guys leveling up when we get this NFL cycle?
The one that I could see somebody looking at, and he's been in the NFL before, maybe somebody kicks the tires on Lane. Do you have interest? Is this a situation you would want? Lane's going to have some stuff to think about with the way things are going at Ole Miss. Obviously, Florida, maybe LSU are going to, definitely Florida would be, come after him. But he's got a good situation at Ole Miss. I'd heard there was like legit interest from the Giants in Marcus Freeman, but I also heard from people around Marcus Freeman that he did not have any interest in leaving. So, Lane would be the one. And I think one thing to keep in mind is guys who've never been in the NFL, like we definitely learned this if you didn't learn it by then with Urban. Like, if you've never been in the NFL, and it is such a different animal, especially because it's like, you think you know a lot when you actually don't know anything, right? When it comes to that world. Like Harbaugh, different. Harbaugh spent 15 years as a player. I think he was on the Raider staff for a minute. And then when he goes to the Niners, he crushes it, and Pete Carroll, obviously people know him from USC, but he was an NFL assistant for a long time before he came back. So I just think it's like the guys who have,
well, Sark fits that profile too.
He wasn't a great offensive coordinator with the Falcons, but he was there for a couple of years.
Yeah.
My hunch on Sark is that if he has interest, it's not going to be for this year. I think he knows he has a roster that should be even better next year. The whole offense, or most of the offense, should come back. It'd be year 2 for Arch in the system. A lot of the offensive line would be year 2 for them. And the other part of that for him is he would, I like his best defensive player is an edge rusher who can't come out till 2027. So maybe you just like push pause, and I've always heard he wants to win a national title at Texas, and probably has a better chance of doing that next year than he does this year.
Last guy, Jon Sumrall from Tulane, kind of has a little bit of an edge to him. I would think that he would be a natural fit at LSU. I know they're aiming maybe for bigger fish. Talk a little bit about the Tulane coach.
Yeah, I think he's the guy that if you don't know him and you spend 10 minutes talking to him, you're like, ooh, I like that guy. He's a dude. It was a former SEC linebacker, was a former SEC assistant coach at Ole Miss in Kentucky. Everybody who's around him comes away raving. Did a really good job at Troy, has done a good job at Tulane. I think he will probably be offered the Auburn job at some point. He's an Alabama native. There's no job in college football that I'm like, you know what? I wouldn't, if LSU, I don't think they would hire the Tulane coach just for the optics of the money. People at Tulane would be uncomfortable with that, but you better get a really good coach if you don't think that guy fits the profile of what you want. Like he's one who I think if they get in the room with him, they may change their mind. Again, he has a pretty good team at Tulane. He doesn't have a great team. They'll probably go 9-3, maybe 10-2. I don't know if they can sneak in the playoff. They had the bad loss on a Thursday night against UTSA, but I just think he is the guy one of those guys who has like rising star coach written all over him.
Well, I've been impressed with what I've seen of him. I said that was done, but I'm going to squeak with one last final one. And you don't have to go long on it, Bruce. Lincoln Riley, do you buy any of that chatter?
I don't. I just, I know his family really likes it out here. And I don't think he's going to like just give away a ton of money. Is he going to go to Stillwater? It's not like the job at his alma mater is going to be open. Joey McGuire may get a top 5 finish in the spot in the playoff bracket at Texas Tech. So I don't know what Lincoln's next move would be like. He's also got like his best recruiting class on the hook to come in next year.
Most of the team, if the quarterback comes back too, they've got a lot of good young players on that team, freshmen and sophomores playing a lot of minutes.
They do. Again, like everything I've heard is that his family really likes it out here. I just think you've been through a couple of years. I don't know what his next move would be like, but I think he has a better chance of having a playoff team in 2026. I mean, they still have a chance to get in there this year. I don't think they will, but like it was a step in the right direction. So let's see what he can do right now. Cause I don't know if there's a lot of people already out on Lincoln around USC anyway, but that doesn't mean, if he gets more players and continues to upgrade him with a lot of playmakers. I mean, it's pretty amazing what they've been able to do. The top 2 running backs are out, and King Miller's a walk-on running back who has been amazing for them. And I think that piece of it has been really impressive because I knew Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane are pretty special, but to see what they've done in the run game, given all the injuries, is he deserves credit for that. That was not something a lot of people saw coming.
Well, I envy the money that Cam Coleman's going to get at USC next year. The kid from Auburn. Golly, get somebody who can throw that guy the football. It's too good of looking at an athlete to be sitting out there with a team that can't throw the football. All right, Bruce, you're the best, brother. We appreciate your time, man, and we'll get you on here again soon.
My pleasure. Thank you, guys.
All right, Buck. There he goes. Bruce is very generous with his time. We appreciate that. By the way, that Auburn receiver, man. He's like the A.J. Brown of college football, man. Like he just wants to give me a chance here, man.
He just wants to feel. Yeah, the A.J. Brown is something interesting, and I understand the frustration, but I've never seen.
Save that thought because we're going to do that on tomorrow's episode. So we'll get to that tomorrow. We appreciate you guys hanging with us. Hope you enjoyed our buddy Bruce Feldman as we look at some of the craziness of the college coaching carousel. We'll see you next time right here on Move the Sticks.